Being evil is not easy in any video game. Luckily for you, it's even harder in Baldur's Gate 3 because you can really see the results of being evil. So why not go with a Sith Lord and really just jam that evil down everyone's throat? In this video today, we're going to go through my build for a Sith Lord in Baldur's Gate 3. Of course, there are no lightsabers, so we'll be trying to recreate this to the best of our ability. As just a heads up, this will be an entirely vanilla build, meaning no mods of course. But I'd like to start making modded videos as my good buddy Remortis was recommending the Oath of Conquest Paladin or the Psi Warrior Fighter, both subclasses in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. So if you'd like to see these modded builds and many more, please let me know in the comments below. But if this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos. So with that being said, we'll be taking 5 levels of Eldritch Knight Fighter, followed by 5 levels of Divination Wizard, then 2 more levels of Eldritch Knight. You could take 1 level of Wizard at the start, then the rest of the formula just so that you can start scribing early, but I don't really like to delay getting extra attack online. This is a pretty straightforward build, and we'll start looking at ways to layer in tons of psychic damage to make for some really fun combos. But that's the entire gist of this video. There's more nuance to certain, feat selections and items and all that whatnot, but if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down. You can also navigate to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline in the description. If you are heading out and you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Any combination of those 3 helps my channel out immensely. I also have a huge BG3 playlist linked at the end of the video and below if you need help with any other subjects. But for those sticking around, let's get started on the ultimate Sith Lord build for Baldur's Gate 3. Loading into the game, let's talk about character creation. Now with this build, I have focused on a lot of Gith items. Not all of them, but some of them. So I recommend that you go with the Gith for this build. I also really like the Gith in general. It's one of the ones that so many content creators and builders out there recommend just because of the great actions that you get. Astral Knowledge's capability to gain a proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability is just so good. In addition to that too, you get access to a lot of really fun items and a lot of really fun narrative options as Gith. But if you want to go with, say, a half-orc, that's going to be really good here as well because of savage attacks. Any race is going to be just fine, and I'm going to give you options for Gith and non-Gith items, so don't worry about it. Please, it's a single-player narrative game. Choose the race that makes the most sense for you and how you want to approach things. Also, too, I'm going with a custom origin, but you can definitely do this with Dark Urge if you want. There's no holding back to it if you want to. In fact, the cloak that you get from going with Dark Urge is also pretty good. So for our class, we're going to go Fighter, as if you haven't guessed. And then for the fighting style, we're going to choose Dueling here. You can choose Great Weapon Fighting if you want. I'm just kind of thinking of a Sith Lord in the constraints of the Knights of the Old Republic games. So the Sith Lord is usually some sort of spellcaster with some kind of melee capabilities. I'm not thinking of like that Sith Juggernaut that just goes to town. Although as I think of the build too, I guess maybe I did make a Juggernaut, but who knows? Who knows? It's not for me to decide. It's going to be up to you on how you want to play the game. The reason I'm going with Dueling is we're going to eventually use a specific weapon in the game that is a one-handed weapon that is better with only one-hand use. You can go with Great Weapon Fighting and use plenty of the Gith two-handed weapons, or even just use two-handed weapons, and you'll be just fine. If you want to make that choice, you definitely can, or even if you want to go with two-weapon fighting, I'll tell you in the feat sections which ones you'd swap off to compensate for the change of weapon choice. But I'm going with Dueling for this build. Background, as I always say, please go with what makes sense for you, your character, and the roleplay you have in mind. And please do create kind of a little bit of a roleplay for the background. It makes it way more enjoyable when you're going through the options to select different things for your characters, what makes sense for the roleplay of what they choose. If you want to min-max the option, as always, I go with Guild Artisan because you get Insight and Persuasion as set skills. You don't have to worry about them. You'll always get proficiency in them, which is absolutely great. Now, for our actual skills themselves, I would go with Intimidation because I'm a Sith, and I would go with Athletics because this can help me out with pushing and the sort. Go with whatever makes sense for you, as I always say. Let's now have a conversation about our ability points. One of the big reasons I'm recommending Duelist is that I'm going to make this a finesse style of fighter. We're not really going to focus on heavy armor. We're going to focus more on robes or light armor or even medium armor if you want to. You can use heavy armor and you can use strength. You would just swap this option right here. I've gone ahead with 16 dexterity into this build. You can go with 17 and use any of the items that would put you up to 18, but I think 16 is probably a good way to go if this is your main character we're talking about. Because our next stat is going to be intelligence, which you can improve through other means, but this gives us just enough points to give us 14 constitution, which is going to help us out with any kind of concentration checks and a good amount of health. And we have 4 points to put into charisma. Since this is the main character, this is going to help us out with any kind of charisma check across intimidation, persuasion, deception, whatever it is. We now have at least a +1 modifier to those, which I quite like. So these are your stats. If you want, you can swap out the dexterity to strength, like I said. And if you really want to play things closer to the edge, or someone who really knows the game very well and what's coming, feel free to push any one of these abilities from a 16 into a 17 and make the adjustments as you see fit. But now let's show what the progression's like. Our first 5 levels are going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going fighter right now. I've loaded onto my Wood Elf character because this is my highest level character, of course. So you'll see that I don't have certain things, but don't worry about those things. So you have over on the right here, you can see we're getting into action surge, immediately gain an action to use the turn. So we have an extra action now, which is going to be great for your spell casting capabilities. We'll accept here and jump up another level, which is now going to allow us to choose our subclass. Ignore that Psy Warrior part because I thought I shut off the mods, but clearly I did not. We're going to be choosing Eldritch Knight. I originally had tried this build using Psy Warrior, but it didn't excite me enough, and I wanted to deliver a vanilla option to you guys. So to open this up, it's going to be Eldritch Knight here, and Eldritch Knight is going to give us access to a lot of great things. Of course, it's going to give us weapon bond, so our things cannot be disarmed and you can throw them. There are certain weapons, of course, that do get a benefit when you do bond them. But our big thing is going to be cantrips. Cantrips are going to be a strong boon for this build as we go through stuff. You'll get stronger and stronger and stronger with them. It's going to be awesome. I don't know why this says charisma. Our spellcasting ability is most certainly not charisma with an Eldritch Knight. Maybe some sort of mod I'd put on is messing everything up, and this is why mods sometimes bother me. But the first cantrips we're going to go with are Shocking Grasp, because we're going to be up close and personal, and Lightning, Sith, it makes sense, and Blade Ward. It's always going to be great. It's defensive. It's really good. By the time we're done with this build, we're going to get damn near every cantrip, so don't really worry about it. Choose them in the order that makes sense for you. Now, for our spells, I like Shield because it's going to always give me a really strong defensive option whenever I get hit with anything. And then from here, you can make a decision. You do have your expanded spells, so you can kind of choose between something from this list is going to go in this slot. So I would choose something on this list that you either want to get or isn't on this list. An example would be Ray of Sickness here. So Ray of Sickness is not on my Eldritch Knight slots, but it is on my expanded one. So try to maybe make these make a little more sense for you if you have a specific set of spells that you want. But my recommendations here are going to be Shield. And I do like Witch Bolt. It is a concentration ability. Concentration abilities will eventually become a pretty cool boon for us. Mage Armor can be good depending on the route you want to take up to the point that we're going to get our wizard stuff, everything online. If you want to just go heavy armor and medium armor or whatever it is, light armor up until that point. Remember, you do have high dex, so having light armor or no armor is probably going to be beneficial. Mage Armor is going to be nice because it basically sets your armor class to 13 plus your dexterity modifier. So if I cast Mage Armor right now, we would be at a 16 AC at the very beginning of the game. That's pretty good. So go with whatever is going to make sense for you and how you're approaching the character. Magic Missile, Mage Armor, whatever it is. I like Magic Missile because it just always hits. It's guaranteed hit and it's force damage, so it's very likely not to be resisted. And then another option here for our expanded spells is Long Strider. It doesn't show it here in the tooltip, but this is a ritual spell and it lasts until long rest. So it's nice that you can cast this on everyone in your party. Everyone now moves 10 feet faster. It's one of the best spells in the game. I always try to make sure someone can cast it or I have an item that casts it on the characters I want to move around a lot. But even then, you could just go with something like Witch Bolt here. You can go with Chromatic Orb, which is a fun way to throw a bunch of different elements and conditions around, which I really do like indeed. Even False Life is pretty good in the early game, but use this ability, use these to kind of or cater this section off of what is going to make sense for your character and how you're approaching them. I'm going to put Witch Bolt in because Lightning, Sith, again, just leaning into that direction. For our fighter level 4, we're going to choose another spell here. And again, just choose more stuff that you didn't choose before. Just layers more and more things. So let's just go here in this case with Chromatic Orb because it's one of my favorites. Now, let's have a conversation about feats. So feat options for this build are going to progress at a way that I think makes sense for the abilities that unlock for us. So at level 4, we're about to get extra attack, so I do want to lean into the melee characteristics of this fighter. So my option here is going to be Duelist, if I can ever fucking find it. No, Defensive Duelist, there it is. So when attacked while wielding a finesse weapon you're proficient with, you can use a reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, possibly causing the attack to miss. So that is going to be a 2, then a 3, then a 4, depending on what level you are. So I like this. It fits into our duelist option for fighting style. If you went with dual wielding, then choose dual wielder. And the nice thing about dual wielder here is it gives you 1 more to your armor class. That's always great. If you went with great weapons, this is when you would choose great weapon master. So this is the point in the game that you would choose that feat to what that corresponds to whatever one you've decided to go with your combat options. After this, we're going to choose another feat with our wizard, and I'm going to do ability improvement, and I'm going to put it into intelligence to really help amp up mainly our spell casting modifier. And I'm going to explain why that's important, because we're going to use arcane synergy and arcane acuity, both leaning off of or pulling from our casting modifier. So this will actually help us do more melee damage, and I'll show that off later in the game video. And then the other capability we're going to go with is Savage Attacker. This allows us to get more damage from our melee attacks. If you want to swap things around, by all means do so. So here's some other really good ones you can go with. Spell Sniper is great just to make it so you're more likely to critical hit with your spells. Warcaster is really good because it gives you advantage on saving throws, and it just gives you reaction as a shocking grasp as a reaction. One I really like the kind of theme I've built for this build is actually Magic Initiate Bard, because this gives us access to Vicious Mockery, which is a psychic ability, and it's also a pretty good what is this thing called, cantrip, and then choose whatever other one here. And then spell wise, it gives us access to Dissonant Whispers, which is another psychic ability. So if you want to really do a lot of psychic spell damage with this build, get Magic Initiate Bard. It's a really good one to pull a lot of psychic damage out from spells that you would normally have to go into Bard or Warlock to get access to. In fact, actually, even what would this give me? I mean, that's not going to be beneficial, but I mean, Poison Spray is cool. We don't even get, for some reason I thought you got access to Dissonant Whispers as a Warlock, but you do not. You get access to Armor of Agathis, which is really cool, but either way, I would definitely go with Magic Initiate Bard there for that option. And if you wanted to, you could go with more heavy armor stuff if you want, more another ability improvement if you wanted to, and put it into dexterity to really amp up your melee damage, or strength if you wanted to go the strength route. So you have a lot of different options. I just gave you the 3 feats that we're going to choose, and in the order we're going to choose them, but you can see how other feats do slot into this build. So let's go ahead and choose Defensive Duelist and move on to our next level. Level 5 is going to give us our extra attack, and thus the last level of fighter for a little bit. Remember, every time you level up as an Eldritch Knight, you have the capability to swap out your spells if need be. So we're going to go ahead and accept this, jump into level 6, and swap this to, let me see here. Well, you can see the other video I was working on. Swap into Wizard, where we now are going to get even more cantrips. Like I said, we have damn near every cantrip we have access to. We got Shocking Grasp as a cantrip, which is really good, so we've got that set. But I really like Bone Chill. A little necrotic damage, fits the theme of the build. Ray of Frost is also very good. Again, kind of fits the theme of the build. Even doing something like Poison Spray and using some of the poison items is really awesome. Firebolt, I just have such bad memories of it, but Acid Splash is cool too. So do with whatever ones make sense for you and how you're progressing. Mage Hand is really cool, but you can't do a ton of things with Mage Hand in this compared to D&D, which is unfortunate. Now, as far as our spells, try not to choose spells you have already chosen. Most of the time they won't be on this list, but sometimes it'll say stuff like, oh, you know, this, we already have this from another subclass. Are you sure you want to choose it? Stuff like that. So we're going to go with like stuff like Tasha's Hideous Laughter. It's not necessarily a forced choke. We'll get there. Don't worry. Ray of Sickness is a good one. False Life for just some temp hit points. We can choose Mage Armor here now. By this point in the game, level 6, Charm Person is going to fall off drastically in its effectiveness. So I do not recommend Charm Person. It's more of an early game thing. But I like Burning Hands is a good one. Even Long Strider, we can get access to that right now. You're going to have access to a Psionic Leap for your Gith, but you can get Enhanced Leap if you wish here as well. And then just prepare the spells that you'd like to have active for your character. You're a wizard, so you can swap them off at whim. At level 2, we choose our subclass. Now, the big thing that a lot of people go with is Eldritch Knight and Abjuration because of the defensive characteristics of Arcane Ward. You can do that. I just don't want to do it because I've built that build already, and everyone tells you to do it. I want something new and exciting. Another good one, though, is Evocation, because this gives you the ability to make it so that any spell that you cast that is an Evocation spell, it will not hurt your allies. They're immune to it. It shuts off friendly fire, basically. But only specifically Evocation spells, so keep that in mind. But what we're going to go with, though, is Divination, which is the other of the really strong subclasses. This gives us Portent dice. So your dreams grant you glimpses that let you influence the future. After each long rest, you gain 2 random Portent dice. During the day, you can use your reaction to change the dice of any attack roll or saving throw rolled near you to one of your Portent dice. This makes it sound like the dice do the rolling. Basically, when you wake up from a long rest, the Portent dice are set. They say, okay, you've woken up, 2 dice are rolled. Those are static numbers that you already have. Maybe it's a 12 and a 20. Maybe it's a 14 and an 8. Whatever it is, it banks those 2 dice rolls that you can then use and sub them in on any attack or saving throw rolled near you, meaning the enemy or an ally. Each Portent die can only be used once, and you lose your unused Portent die at the end of each day. You've got that, you have access to them. Also, scribing divination spells is cheaper. Okay, whatever. So you have access to that. And then for this, just choose, again, more things that you didn't choose before. Sleep is also one that falls off in its effectiveness, just like Charm Person does. So again, just kind of choose stuff that makes sense for you. We're going to push up here to level 3 with Wizard, which means we're at level 8 here. We're going to choose 2 more levels on Wizard because I want our Wizard to get to level 5, meaning we'll get access to level 3 spells. So at this point, we have some level 2 spells that we can play with, and there are some spells that are coming from our level 2 Eldritch Knight. Stuff like Darkness, that is only available to them. I'm sorry, that is available to them, but they don't have this huge list. So we have to kind of be a little careful here. So, sorry, my allergies are ripping and gripping me over here. I'm going to go with something like a Hold Person, like a Forced Choke from a Hold Person. And I like something like Magic Weapon here, because this also is a concentration ability, which will help us in the future. But other things, too, that are really cool are Phantasmal Force, because this does psychic damage. A lot of this build will play with psychic damage once we get into itemization and further spells in the build. Deal damage to a creature each turn. The type of damage changes to the last type the creature suffered. So if you're using Phantasmal Force every turn with your bonus action, and it was doing psychic damage, it'll continue to do it. But if someone hit them with like a fire ability, now you're doing more fire damage to them. But we're probably going to be focusing on additional casts of that one thing that we use, psychic damage. So I'm just going to choose those 2 for right now. Magic Weapon's also a really good one there, like I said. I also really like Crown of Madness because this fits the build itself too. So play with that, have some fun with it. In this one, we get more cantrips. Just go with whatever one you don't have or want to actually add in. Friends is a good one if you're not playing in honor mode, as sometimes it can aggro things. But we'll go with here, like this for some defensive capabilities. Mirror Image. This is just going to give us free 9 AC per 3 AC per illusory duplicate up. So it's a free 9 AC is what I meant to say. And I also like Misty Step for a lot of really good movement here. Ray of Enfeeblement's really good to just knock things strength down. So play around with these, choose the things that make sense. Misty Step is going to make sense if I'm playing this character very melee oriented versus maybe Ray of Enfeeblement helps when I'm hanging back a little bit. For feat, we're going to, ability improvements up here. Put that into intelligence. It's going to give us more prepared spells, all sorts of fun things. We're going to choose our last level of Wizard, but this is when we get our level 3 spells. Remember, too, now that we have access to these, we just needed the spell slots unlocked. We can swap all of our known spells to be these spells if we want. So Stuff like haste is a really good one, right? Because haste is kind of like your Jedi/Sith speed. Hypnotic pattern is just always really good. I'm going to choose lightning bolt because, again, Sith, blah, blah, blah. But I also really like counterspell. It's probably one of the best spells in the game, and I think every single character, or every single build, every single party needs one counterspell caster. God, I swear, if I could actually speak, I'd be a really good YouTuber. Otherwise, I'm crap. But other fun ones, too, are mobility spells such as Grant Flight. Glyph of Warding is always really strong. If you wanted to be kind of a summoner character, go with Animate Dead if you want to do that. Vampiric Touch is also very good and fits into the style of this build as well. Play with the ones that make sense for you. We'll accept that. And remember, too, you're a wizard. This isn't set in stone. You know, you're scribing more spells in, you're adding them in. As long as you've got the spell slots, it doesn't matter. This isn't like playing any of the set spell casting characters like, say, I don't know, like a warlock, right? Or a bard who needs their levels to swap these things off. You just swap them at whim. So our next level up here is going to bring us another feat, and that is going to go into Savage Attacker, because I want to focus on the melee portion of this build. If you want to focus more on the actual casting, I'd go Spell Sniper in this case at this point, but up to you. And then now we choose our last level, and the reason I did 7-5 rather than a 6-6 split, because level 6 Divination, you do get another capability. But I wanted this specifically, War Magic. You have honed your body in magic for war. After you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack using a bonus action. I love that because now my cantrips can feel like they're a part of my build rather than I have to sacrifice to use an action and sacrifice the ability to actually hit things with my weapon. I can do both in one round and get a lot out of it, even using Action Surge to do a lot more even from there. So a lot of fun can be done with that. I think this really opens up the build in my opinion. And you'll get this by like beginning mid of Act 3 anyway. So this is what I was saying. At this point now, we're going to choose 2 more level 2 spells. So these boxes tell me, hey, you've already chosen this spell. Again, we are a wizard character, so a lot of this doesn't really matter. We're scribing spells on and off. These are just spells that are pretty much always known because of our Eldritch Knight side. So this is when I would choose Darkness or Shatter if I wanted to, or Protection from Evil and Good, or Malfasted Arrow. This is the time I would do it, rather than trying to do it on my wizard and sacrifice these slots here. So we've got all this progression locked in. Let's take a look at some itemization. Unfortunately, I actually don't have quite a few of the items that I think are pretty good, or at least compulsory for this build. So I'm going to go through them right here. I'm going to talk about them and why I like them and why I think they're probably some of the better ones. So to start us off, we're going to look at the Robe of Supreme Defenses. You're going to get this in the very beginning of Act 3 in Rivington, before you do anything with Shadowheart's quest. There's an individual you have to talk to. He's a vendor. But this robe, I think, is really cool for this build. While concentrating, you add your spellcasting ability modifier. For us, remember, that's like a +4 right now, to your saving throws, and gain a +1 bonus to armor class. So this gives you a lot of really cool crunchy armor, and on top of it, you can use mage armor on this as long as if your AC is pretty low anyway. So this gives you a substantial amount of AC, and you're getting the benefit of your dexterity into that armor class. And now this spellcasting modifier is helping out your saving throws. So anything that's not directly hitting you, any kind of spell, anything that's causing those saving throws, wisdom, charisma, whatever the hell it is, you're now getting that free +4. I absolutely love that. I think it's a really cool approach to this. Of course, we're going with the Robe of the Weave right now because it helps with spell casting. There's other fun things attached to that, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, the other one that I think is just absolutely necessary is the Ring of Elemental Infusion. When you deal acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage using a spell or cantrip, that element infuses your weapon. I love that. Until the end of your turn, you deal an additional 1d4 damage of that element on your first successful weapon attack. And since, remember, our cantrips still line us up for bonus action weapon attacks, we can use these very regularly. We use the primary action of using a Shocking Grasp cantrip. Well, boom, now we have lightning damage on our weapon. Or whatever cantrip it is, we now have that element imbued on our weapon to do that additional damage. I think that's really cool because, remember, we're using those cantrips so much since we have access to damn near every single one of them. So I really like this for this build. I think it's a really cool one. Now, outside of those, there are some well, there's actually one more. There's one more big one. The Ring of Arcane Synergy. This gives us synergetic cantrips. When you deal damage with any cantrip, you gain Arcane Synergy. So what is Arcane Synergy? We have two different ones, Arcane Acuity and Arcane Synergy. I'll talk about Arcane Acuity in a little bit. But Synergy gives us when weapon attacks deal additional damage equal to affected entity's spellcasting modifier. That's huge. And all you have to do is deal damage with a cantrip. It lasts for 2 turns, so you could switch off doing that every other turn. And that means we're getting our free damage bonus from our dexterity, since we're using a finesse weapon, and we're now getting our damage bonus from intelligence because of this ring. You get this ring in Act 1. So this turns on so much playability and so much strength for this build very early. There is a diadem of Arcane Synergy, but we're not using it for the build. You can get that though at the very same location in Act 1 in the Creche. But both of these in conjunction turn Arcane Synergy on for 4 damn turns. Also, the nice thing about the diadem of Arcane Synergy is it just is overall it's a good one to get until you have a better headpiece item. You have those 2 items. Now, the other things I do want to talk about are things that are relegated to if you want to play a Gith. The first one is the Soulbreaker Greatsword, which is a little bit easier of a sword to get access to. When wielded by a Gith, this weapon deals an additional 1 to 4 psychic damage. It is a greatsword, so it's a 2-handed weapon, and it has a very strong weapon capability that also does psychic damage. You also get a +2 bonus to initiative rolls. So this one you can get very early in Act 1. If you want to really cheese it, you can get access to this other one, the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. It's trickier to cheese. It's harder to do, especially if it's in honor mode because there's no reloading, but it's still a great weapon here. When wielded by a Gith, this weapon deals an additional 1 to 6 psychic damage. A Gith holding this weapon has advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws, resistance to psychic damage, and cannot be charmed. And you get the same weapon attack ability from the greatsword we just talked about. There's also Voss's Silver Sword, but I just don't really like it compared to these two. These two are just so much better in my opinion because Voss's Silver Sword deals with like specific creature types. This is just flat damage increase through psychic capabilities if you are a Gith, and again, if you're going with the 2-handed route for this build. If you're not doing that, these weapons are going to be a moot point because you can't take advantage of them. So those are all the items that I unfortunately don't have, and as you can see, they're pretty damn important. Let's talk about the items that we do have, starting with our weapon. So the one that we're going to be focusing on here is the Duelist Prerogative. This is an Act 3 weapon that you'll get, and it is the main reason we've gone with Duelist. It's a +3 weapon, which is great. Main hand only, of course. While your offhand is empty, you score a critical hit when rolling a 19. Moreover, you gain an additional reaction per turn. So we have our reaction as part of the Duelist, right? The Duelist feat. We also have a reaction that's built into this actual weapon. On a hit with a melee weapon, use a reaction to deal additional necrotic damage equal to your proficiency bonus. By the time you get this, that's a +4. So there's a free 4 necrotic damage if you so wish it. And you get challenge to duel. That's okay. You challenge an enemy to only attack you, inflicting bleeding on the target. But hey, it's free bleeding, and it doesn't require you to be in concentration like the Paladin's duel does. And Dueler's Enthusiasm, which I really like, because what this does is we have extra attack with our primary action, right? Well, let's just assume you're in melee combat. You really don't really have anything you want to do with your bonus action. This gets you essentially a 3rd attack because this will attack at your full level of attacks. While you are not dual wielding, you can make an additional melee attack with the dueler. It's a bonus action. So, and there's no like refresh on this. You can just do this every turn. So this effectively turns your character into a 3 attack per turn character, which I absolutely love. So this gives you the option to be way more melee centric if you want. Just kind of an up to you if you want to go with this route or go with the 2-handed weapon route. Now, outside of that, we have some other weapons you can use on the way up here. The Sword of Life Stealing is a pretty good one. On a critical hit, the target takes an extra 10 necrotic damage as long as it isn't a construct or an undead, and you gain 10 temp hit points, which is always lovely, and a +2 to the weapon enchant. Some other good ones, though, are, of course, the Falar Luve, which is a finesse weapon, which is always awesome. What I like about this, too, is that it gives me basically a free Bane or a free Bless through its melody capabilities. it just is a versatile weapon, so it forces you to be in two-handed if you are only using it in one hand. At the beginning of the game, though, that's just fine. Just don't really worry about it. Yeah, you're going to miss out on the capabilities of it, but you could just as easily use any other short sword or any other dagger if you wanted to on the way up to getting this one. Other cool ones, though, are like Kethric's Warhammer, because it has Psychic to lean into more of that Psychic direction. Again, it's versatile, so it will be two-handed. And also Chargebound Warhammer. This is a cool one because this gives us another +1, so it becomes a +2 Warhammer. And this weapon deals an additional 1 to 6 lightning damage if you bind it as an Eldritch Knight. So what I would say here is, yeah, sure, you're not getting the advantage of your duelist feat, but you're making up for it in all the capabilities that this thing turns online for you, so I wouldn't worry about it until you get to the Duelist Prerogative. You could even re-roll at the point that you get the Duelist Prerogative if you wanted to play the game that way, if you want to be kind of gamey about it. Other thing, though, is the Drake Throat Glaive. You'll want to get this in Act 2 from the Moonrise Tower. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us a Draconic Elemental weapon. So we're not going to use that weapon. We're going to take this weapon, toss it on the ground, equip this. We'll have this ability right here. Now we can infuse this with lightning, which we've been doing a ton of, and you could really go with a lot. You could do this build with a bunch of lightning charges, but in my opinion, lightning charges don't scale to the late game because they're only on very, very early game items. Very few other items in the game have those capabilities, so it's unfortunate in my opinion. But you could do thunder here, we could do some fire, we could do cold or acid. I'm just going to throw on some lightning because whatever. And now, ruin the game. Pick that back up and swap it out. Now our Duelist Prerogative does necrotic and lightning damage, and it's a +4. That is substantial. Remember here, this is what this means. This weapon receives a 3 bonus to attack rolls and deals 3 bonus damage. So this has a 4 to attack rolls and deals 4 bonus damage. That's why plussing to an item or a weapon is so important and good and crucial. Lastly, though, are our range slots. The dead shot is what we'll eventually land on to increase our crit hit by an additional 1 point. So this, in conjunction with this, we're critting on 18+. To begin with, though, you could go with the Darkfire Shortbow to get resistance to fire and cold and get a free cast of haste. And you get this right at the beginning of Act 2. It's a great way to go. But those are our weapons. Let's now talk about armor. Armor choices are honestly very far and very wide. It's going to depend upon you and how you want to approach the character. Do you want this character to be an armored character leading up to the point that I'm at in the game? Or do you want the character to be really trying to approach this from a heavy type of dexterity, no armor route? And I had thought about even originally putting a single level into Monk to turn on the dexterous capabilities of the monk, but that can sometimes lead to a lot of really hectic things we're trying to decide upon with armor. So if you're wondering about that and why I didn't bring it up, that's why. We're going to start off with the helmet because the helmet gives us arcane acuity. So if synergy adds our spellcasting modifier to our weapon damage, arcane acuity has a +1 bonus to its spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class for each remaining turn. So every time you deal damage with a weapon attack, you basically get a +2 to your spell save DC and spell attack rolls. So it's easier for you to actually hit with your spells per turn remaining. This is why it is so crucial that we have this helmet of arcane acuity here. It's going to be great that it's going to work so well with the Ring of Elemental Infusion, which is going to give us those 1d4 to our weapon attacks. The Arcane Synergy is when you deal damage with a cantrip, you gain Arcane Synergy, the ring, and that is just going to further add to all these capabilities that are coming in from both the Arcane Acuity and Synergy. And we have another way to get Arcane Acuity too, which I'll talk about in just a second here. But other options that we have, if you do go with the Gith, you can go with the Circlet of Psionic Revenge. When you succeed a saving throw, the foe that caused the throw takes psionic damage, and you get a +1 to Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throw. Other ones, though, too, are the Circlet of Mental Anguish, which can heal you when an enemy fails saving throws against one of your spells or cantrips. The Fire Acuity you get before Arcane Acuity, and this is just a way to get Arcane Acuity online very early in the build, but it only is off of fire damage. Strictly off any type of fire damage, though. So that can be your weapon, that can be a cantrip, that can be a spell, whatever it is. You just have to deal it. Another one too is the Fistbreaker Helm. You gain a +1 bonus to spell save DC and a +1 bonus to initiative rolls. So this can help out in the very early of the game. Purchase the game, you only get this in Act 2. The Flawed Helldusk Helmet, again, right at the beginning of Act 2, +2 bonus to saving throws and spells. This is armor though, keep that in mind. And then lastly too, if you want to go really hard in the paint on casting, the Hood of the Weave adds a +2 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls if you don't want to do as much melee damage. This is just a guaranteed. This is basically a free 2 turns of Arcane Acuity, right? You could use this rather than Arcane Acuity. Just kind of up to you. And I'll show you again how you can get Arcane Acuity outside of that. Hint, it's an elixir. So for armor, we're using the Robe of the Weave because I do not have the Robe of Supreme Defense. But the nice thing about this is it does increase our spell save DC and attack rolls. And whenever the wearer succeeds a saving throw against a spell, they regain 1 to 6 hit points, plus a +2 to armor class. So this gives us quite a bit of armor class that we can really take advantage of. And we get that +1 to 6 hit points. Real juicy. Absolutely love it. Furthermore, too, we have Bided Time. This is a real early one you can get. The wearer gains Arcane Charge whenever they're hit by a melee attack. Arcane Charge is while threatened, meaning that something's in close combat with you. Affected entity has a +2 bonus to damage with spells. So you deal more damage if you're up close and personal. There's not a lot of Arcane Charge items in the game, which is unfortunate because this is a really cool mechanic. Shelter of Athralaka, you have advantage on saving throws against spells, but this gives you a free cast of Mirror Image. It's just an early robe that you can use. But by all means, please use heavy or medium or light armor up to this point, whatever you find that makes sense. You can even get the Psionic Ward armor. If the item detects the wearer is Gith, they have resistance to psychic damage, and whenever they succeed a saving throw against a spell, they regain 1 to 4 hit points. So just like the Robe of the Weave, this is medium armor. So keep that in mind. Again, too, if you are a Gith moving into the hand slot, you can go with the Haraknir Bracers. You can cast Mage Hand as a bonus action. This doesn't require you to be Gith. It's just part of the Gith set, as it were. But we are using the gloves with the Battle Mage. When a weapon attack roll inflicts a condition, the wielder gains Arcane Acuity. Every single element inflicts a condition. So you're pretty much good there. Not necessarily a set condition, but you'll be fine, is what I'm trying to say. So this gives us Arcane Acuity. Just one turn of it, I believe. Yeah, just one turn of it. It would specifically say. So basically, whenever we do weapon attacks, we get 3 turns of Arcane Acuity, which then makes it so that we do +3 bonus to our attack rolls. And again, we have an elixir that's going to help us out even further with that. I'm just going to show you right now. It's called... Oh, I guess I don't have it. It's this elixir right here. Elixir of Battle Mage's Power. Affected entity has Arcane Acuity until its long rest. So you always have 3 turns of Arcane Acuity until you jump into combat. Those turns will start to degrade. But basically, once you jump into combat and hit someone, you're going to have 6 turns of Arcane Acuity. It's going to make your spell attack rolls in DC +6 right after turn 1, pretty much. Well, maybe +5, because after the other turn it degrades. But other than that, we have tons of other glove options. Going with more of the melee route, you have Surging Accuracy. So when you use Action Surge, which you have as a fighter, +1d4 bonus to attack rolls for the rest of your turn, and a +1 to strength saving throws. Another one with melee in mind is Legacy of the Masters. Gain a +2 to attack rolls, a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with weapons, and a +1 to strength. Keep in mind, this is medium, and this is medium armor. The gloves of the Battle Mage's Power are not armor, so that's nice. And why those things matter, this is light armor, this is medium armor. Those things matter because if you take a look at Mage Armor, protect a target from attacks, increase its armor class to 13 plus its dexterity modifier. The target can't be wearing armor. So you can use Mage Armor in certain circumstances that you've decided to use equipment that isn't armor. Which brings us to our other options for gloves. You have 3 caster gloves. The Gemini gloves, which make it so cantrips can target multiple foes. The quick spell gloves, cantrips that cost actions now cost bonus actions. And lastly, the Spellmite gloves. These basically are the same thing that Great Weapon Master does. When casting a spell that requires an attack roll, you can take a -5 penalty to the roll to deal an additional 1d8 damage. Kind of like what... It's like Great Weapon Master for spells, basically. It's a toggle. You do it like this. You put them on, and it becomes a toggle like that you can toggle on and off for certain situations. They're really great if you want to do more of the spell casting with this character. For our back option, we've gone with the Cloak of the Weave just to get that bonus to spell save DC and attack rolls. Absorb Elements is nice. It does imbue our weapon with that additional 1d6 of the element that it did deflect, but you only do that once per short rest. Other options, though, are the Cloak of Displacement, which basically starts the turn. You start combat in with Mirror Image on, more or less. And then Cloak of Protection, which is just free armor class. So whichever one makes sense for you, character. Now, we've talked about the 2 rings that you should use with the build. I don't have them, unfortunately, so here's some other options. Mental Inhibition. When a foe fails a saving throw against you, they have Mental Fatigue for 2 turns, meaning they have a -1 penalty to Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma saving throws. Also, when it fails a Wisdom, Intelligence, or Charisma saving throw while having 5 or more turns of this condition, they take psychic damage. So this is just another way to kind of really play with that. There's not a lot of Mental Fatigue items in the game either, unfortunately. Ring of Free Action. This just means that you can ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained, which is lovely. Other rings are just simply Crusher's Ring, always really good. For your necklace, I have the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation, which is the one I do recommend. When one of your cantrips deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, add your spellcasting modifier to the damage. So now we're adding a +6 to just like a measly Shocking Grasp. Look at that. Got a nice little ditty going on there, right? And it has advantage on creatures with metal armor. I think Shocking Grasp is probably one of my favorite cantrips. You can really play around with this and have a lot of fun. Other really good necklaces, though, are just simply stuff like this. Amulet of Misty Step to give you mobility, and the Spell Crux Amulet, and also the Spell Savant Amulet. With these 2, you equip them, and you use the Spell Slot Restoration, and you take it off. You don't have to keep this on. So you would do this, you'd press this button, you'd restore the spell slot you wanted to restore, and then you'd take it off and put this back on. So while I think this is the best in slot for this build, these are best in pocket. Just keep them in that pocket, use them whenever it makes sense, and then pop back into the other one. And the last slot we're going to talk about are the boots. If you're a Gith, use the Boots of Psionic Movement. When a Gith casts Fly, which they get a free thing of, their next melee weapon attack deals an additional 1 to 4 psychic damage. It also gives you Dex saving throw. Awesome. Is medium armor. And another armor option too is the Boots of Persistence for freedom of movement and long strider. It is medium armor again. And lastly, the Boots of Striding, which are again medium armor, but if you're concentrating, you gain momentum and you cannot be knocked prone or be moved against your will if you're concentrating, which hinges upon the robe. The robe requires you to concentrate as well, right? So you want to play along with that. As I say all this stuff on concentration stuff, I now realize I probably should have recommended Resilient Constitution or Warcaster, but we've gotten this far. Another one, though, that is not related to armor is the Disintegrating Night Stalkers. Use these to get the advantage of them without having to deal with all the hoopla of having armor, and so cannot be entangled, ensnared, and webbed, and you get Misty Step, but you also cannot slip on grease or ice, which is always awesome. Just to kind of show you really quick. I put these things on. Put on. So now we have 16 AC. Just to show you, that would have put us at 19 if you don't wear armor. I just don't want you to look at this build and go, man, your AC is so low. Yeah, it's low, but we have so many ways to augment it and improve it. We've got shield and all these other characteristics and capabilities that really don't make us as glass cannony as this build looks like it might be. It actually has plenty of defensive characteristics tied into it, especially with defensive duelist and a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. But let's put this all together and show off some combat. Now, I don't always advocate for Illithid scum, but in this build, it just makes sense to go with a lot of Illithid powers. They're very thematic, and they make you look like a Sith Lord. So we've gone ahead and taken the tadpole. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then don't worry about it. And we have all of the abilities here. And from there, we also can pull in a lot of other fun stuff. Now, I don't want to really talk about all of the individual Illithid powers that are really strong and super crunchy, and you can take them and they just kind of break the game, because if you take this whole brain, yeah, it's really, really, really strong. But I think if I go for the ones that make sense for the build, as far as like the overall theme of the character, I definitely like... Okay, well, this is not going to have that guy. Displace, but that's not really the point of it. Creature suffering falling damage because of your actions take an additional psychic damage. It's because I want to get to this one. Repulsor. Push anything and anyone back 20 feet. So very much a force push. Then we have kind of a force pull here with Black Hole. Create a point of intense gravity that pulls in all nearby enemies and slows them. That's just going to be absolutely crunchy for this. Cull the Weak is good, but we're not going to... In this build, I'm not going for every single one of them. It's good when you take a lot of them because this will automatically kill something if they are at or less than the amount of evolved points you've got. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. So if something has 8 hit points, they die immediately. But I do want Mind Blast. So you can grab that. And Psionic Backlash is cool. When an enemy within 30 feet casts a spell, you can use reaction to inflict psychic damage to the caster per spell's level. I like that just because it's kind of a cool way to add more psychic damage. The rest of these are all really good and great and all that. But I also really like Psionic Dominance. So when an enemy within 60 feet targets you with a spell of a level that is lower than or equal to your proficiency bonus, so 4 or lower at the time you'd want to do this, you can use reaction to nullify the spell. So now our reaction's kind of cramped up. So do just keep that in mind. We have this for reaction. We have this for there's another reaction. This for a reaction. We have the thing here for a reaction. We have our duelist reaction. We have a lot of different reactions on the table, but this does add an additional reaction. That's why we've chosen this weapon. So now we've got 2 to play with rather than just 1 that recycles every turn anyway. So now let's put it all together and show off some combat. Jumping into combat, let's show off some stuff. So right away we can see that our character has been hit with a arrow of slaying. I can use my shield capabilities, or this is where you can see the portent dice coming into effect. So this dice, you can see they need an 18 to hit, they rolled a 21. I can change the 18 that they rolled to a 3. So just to show that off, we'll go ahead and press that button and don't react on will. So now that misses me, and I didn't really have to do, well, I did have to do something. I wasted one of my portent dice. And furthermore, okay, something shot at me. I've got Ensnaring Strike. It doesn't need to be targeted at me. I can still use Psionic Backlash here. So a nearby creature casts a spell. You get to use this and deals 1 to 4 per level. So in level 1, let's just not react to that. So you can see that I have a lot of really cool supplemental abilities that I can use outside of just simply what I can do in a given turn, which is really fun, right? It means your character's a little bit more active. You don't just feel like once their turn's up, their usefulness is kind of out, which I really like. You know, I think that one of the big things I struggle with a lot of characters is that once it's not their turn, I feel helpless. So I like having characters that have very active reactions or a lot of really fun abilities that really kick in on their turn to make it for a lot of crunchy and fun gameplay. And I keep saying crunchy, I don't know what it means in this context, but I'm using it and it sounds fun. So let's just kind of take a look at the character and what we've got. Right now, I have Arcane Acuity up from the Battle Mage's Elixir. So this was at 3, now it's at 2 right now because it's my turn. But I also used a Potion of Speed, giving me an additional action right now just to showcase more in the constraints of this video. So right now I can go ahead and use a cantrip, as you can see all of them at the top right here. And let's just click this button. We have quite a few to take advantage of. 6 juicy cantrips. Even just using Blade Ward is a good situation to activate some of our abilities. But we can go ahead and remember here, we're using this. So whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, and when a weapon attack inflicts a condition, the wielder gains Arcane Acuity. So we can have some fun here. Run up over here.
Best be on my way.
Let's just do a weapon attack. And we have Luck of the Far Realms because of our Illithid abilities. But there we go. We just did 19, 7, and 7 damage. Now, because we don't have the items that would give us Arcane Synergy, assume this would actually have 7 more damage, because you would have, you can see the proficiency bonus, favorable beginnings bonus, 4 dexterity bonus. Then we would have the +4 bonus from our intelligence if Arcane Synergy was active. So unfortunately I can't show that off right here, right? But this would be 23 damage rather than 19, which is really cool. And we landed a critical hit, so I can add Withering Cut into this, not to be confused with Wuthering Heights, the book I fucking hated reading. And this is going to add 4 more points of necrotic damage. I'm just going to choose not to do that, so I can use it for other situations. And I still have my extra attack, so we can do more stuff here. Let's just take the extra attack out of that. Let's just go ahead and Piercing Strike because it's fun. Because what is Piercing Strike? It's a condition. Oof, look at that cool little... So that guy now has a condition from Gaping Wounds, 18 damage, 4 necrotic, 2 lightning, and they failed the piercing save, so they got all that action going. But they also now have mental fatigue. So looking at this character, they've got 2 stacks of mental fatigue. My arcane acuity is now up to 6. So this is a +6 bonus to my spell attack rolls. So I've done 2 bits of damage. I still have a full action I can do some fun stuff with. Let's just Shocking Grasp and have some fun. I'm already swinging on advantage, so they've got metal armor. Well, you know what? Maybe we... Let's see. I was like, maybe we don't do that just to kind of like have some fun over here. Yeah, we'll come on over here. Get your attack of opportunity out of the way. And so this is an example of when we can use defensive duelist, right? So when I attack with a melee attack, add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, possibly causing to miss, because they rolled an 18, or they needed an 18, they rolled a 20. So that's going to be enough to make it miss, because it's a +4 for my proficiency bonus. Boom, miss. And I have all these really fun abilities here that we can take advantage of too with our Illithid stuff, right? So I could go ahead and Psionic Backlash all the way through things, Mind Blast things, Black Hole, Force Tunnel, which is a cool little charge, Psionic Overload, which is cool, Repulsor, I can just blow everything up and shoot them back from me. You have a lot of really fun things that really fit into the overall image of a Sith Lord. Let's go ahead and just Shocking Grasp this guy. And for fun numbers, we'll go for a crit. So 35 points of damage of a crit right there, right? That's just absolutely lovely. We're getting that +1 from Arcane, +1 from Arcane, +6 from Arcane Acuity. That is so good. So remember, it's not just the likelihood to hit, it's the amount of damage that's being increased here. And because we did that, it was a cantrip, so that means that we can use our bonus action to do a full-fledged extra attack. Let's go ahead and just do that. We go ahead and hit it, and we're good. We're out of all of our actions here, but in that stead, I could have used this bonus action for Jeweler's Enthusiasm to use this, but we still have Action Surge. So let's add a third action into the mix just to have some more fun, and we can do even more stuff, right? Like, let's see what's a good one to do. I look at Hold Person as kind of like Forced Choke, which I really like. Maybe we can do something like this. Remember, we can go all the way up to level 4 spell slots. So we can upcast even like a False Life to give us 4 × 7 temporary hit points. We can have Phantasmal Force doing a lot of really fun damage here. Just do this. Okay, so that guy's now got Phantasmal Force on, and that's going to allow me to do a lot of more fun stuff. Like, you have so many fun and cool abilities in this build, and I think it's really cool. Can it be cooler with some of the mod subclasses? Yes. Is it the best build in the world? No, absolutely not. I think it will struggle on any kind of solo playthrough. I definitely wouldn't do it. But I think if you were doing an honor mode, this character would be an absolute wrecking shithouse. It's not even like a term, but it would really do really well between Arcane Acuity and Arcane Synergy. Because the amount of damage coming out of your character, right now, I now have a +8 to my damage. That's huge. That is so much extra damage coming in. But having all that functionality, not to consider the fact that if I had the Arcane Synergy up, it'd be 8 plus an additional 4. So every time I'd hit something with a spell, it'd be a full-fledged 8 damage or 12 damage more. It's just so fun that you can stack these two things together and have a character that's not hulking in heavy armor, but very nimble and able to use that dexterity bonus to your advantage. That means you have a very high initiative as well. So you're probably going first. Maybe you want to take one of the feats out and put alert in. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how you would maybe change this if you wanted to make a Sith Lord build, or any other type of element that you think would maybe make a little bit more sense here. I'm always down to hear those alternate opinions in the comment section below. If I were to redo this with the modded classes, I actually wouldn't use the Psi Warrior. I would probably go with the Conquest Paladin because it feels more like a Sith. A lot of fear-inducing effects and such. So if I were to redo this build, which I actually might, I would do it as like a Sith Warrior, leaning more heavily into heavy armor, big, huge weapons, a lot of area of effect, a lot of fear effects, a lot of crowd control from that Conquest Paladin submod. But let me know in the comment section below too if you want to see those mod builds. Always down to do it. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.